And we are in line 13. When they went from one nation to another, from one kingdom to another people, he permitted no one to do them wrong. Yes, he reproved kings for their sakes, saying, do not touch my anointed ones, and do my prophets no harm. And so that right there is it sends us to First Chronicles 16:20 through 22 that we already read already. But we'll read again for contextual sake, where it says, when they went from one nation to another and from one kingdom to another people, he permitted no man to do them wrong. Yes, he reproved kings for their sakes. So, he's corrected kings for their sakes, saying, do not touch my anointed ones, and do my prophets no harm. And that is clearly when God has his prophets, he has his ministers and stuff like that. Those who proclaim the word of the Lord, you cannot just do anything you want to, to the prophets of God, because God is going to always fight and to fight for his people. All right. So when they went from one nation to another, from one kingdom to another people, all right, God was with them. That's in 13. 14, he permitted no one to do them wrong. He didn't. The only one who did them wrong was God himself when they were what? Disobedient. He permitted no one to do them wrong. Yes, he reproved kings for their sakes, and saying, do not touch my anointed ones, and do my prophets no harm. And clearly, you can't just mess with God's people. We can't. 16. Moreover, he called for a famine in the land. He destroyed all the provision of bread. He sent a man before them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. They hurt his feet with fetters. He was laid in irons until the time that his word came to pass. The word of the Lord tested him. The king sent and released him. The ruler of the people let him go free. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his possessions, to bind his princes at his pleasure and teach his elders wisdom. So let's go back and elaborate on 16. Moreover, he called a famine in the land. He destroyed all the provision of bread. Now that he is a capital he, meaning that God is one who called the famine. See, we can't play around with God, think, oh, God is a loving God. God is a loving God. And God is also a God of wrath. God is a God of chastisement. And we just can't just say that we're doing and getting away with and doing all kind of things, because God has an all-seeing eye. And he sees who's doing what, and he's seeing who's not doing what. So God called a famine. He did that. 41:54. So Genesis 41:54. That says, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. The famine was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. All right, because that's how God did it. It was a famine everywhere else, but there was no no bread anywhere else, but there was bread in Egypt. All right, why? Because Joseph was there. Remember, we just read, touch not my anointed, do my prophets no harm. And so wherever the prophet is, and the man of God, and that man got that anointing from God, God is going to always take care of that anointed man from God. He's going to always, that's where he was. And so Egypt was blessed because of Joseph. Egypt was blessed because of Joseph. Not because of Egypt, but because of Joseph. So that sends us to Genesis 41:30. I think I just said 41:30. That says, but after them 7 years of famine will arise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. All right. And so that was a dream that that Pharaoh had, and then so David interpreted that for him. And so how David interpreted it, that dream happened just like that. And then so Acts 7:11, it sends us to Acts 7:11. That says, now a famine and great trouble came over all the land of Egypt and Canaan, and our fathers found no sustenance. So now a famine and great affliction came over all the land of Egypt and Canaan, and our fathers found no sustenance. But when Jacob heard that there was a grain in Egypt, he sent out our fathers first, and the second time Joseph was made known to his brothers, and Joseph's family became known to the Pharaoh. Then Joseph sent and called his father Jacob and all his relatives to him, 75 people. So Jacob went down to Egypt, and he died, he and our fathers. And they were carried back to Shechem and laid in a tomb that Abraham bought for a sum of money from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. But when the time of the promise drew near, which God had sworn to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt, till another king arose who did not know Joseph. And so that's a different story. But while Joseph was there, he had the favor of God with Pharaoh and with the Egyptian people because of Joseph. So let's go ahead and pause there, and we'll pick it up in our next segment.